Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you our favorite recipes from 2024. These recipes were new to us last year. They're things that we tried for the first time and that we absolutely loved. And some of them we've already made at least once, some a couple of times since I first shared them. Some of them we cannot wait to make again and we'll definitely make in the future. So if you could use some new recipe ideas, just keep watching. First up, on New Year's Day last year, we did like a traditional Southern New Year's Day dinner with pork and greens, black-eyed peas, cornbread, and I decided to make Hoppin John, which I know I'm a Southerner, but guys, I've never had it before. I'd never made it before this time, and both Gary and I loved it, but especially Gary. After we finished that meal, he was like, okay, put this on your favorites list. We definitely need this again. And I've made it a couple times since then, and it is delicious. I will have the recipe linked in the description box below for you. I've got this skillet on medium heat. I'm going to add a few strips of bacon that I just gave a rough chop. And then I'm going to cook the bacon until it is brown and crispy. Now I'm going to add in some diced onion. Give that a stir. Next up, Rosie, that's I Heart Recipes, she suggested using frozen collard greens, which to be quite honest with you, I didn't even know that they made frozen collard greens, but I will definitely use these more often. This was such a great way to add greens without, the long amount of time that it takes to cook them. So I added the greens, I gave that a stir, and then you want to cook that for a few minutes until the greens are tender and your onions are tender. Once they're there, we're going to add in some cooked white rice. Now, I'm just using the microwave in a pouch just to make it easy this night, but this would be a great way to use up leftover rice. So I'm going to give the rice a good stir. Then we're going to add in our black-eyed peas, and these are canned. I drained and rinsed them, and I'm going to give those a stir. And the greens in this, the collard greens, that represents obviously green, the color of money, wealth. And then the black-eyed peas are, again, another symbol of prosperity. People say that they look like pennies, so another wealth. And then we're doubling up on the pork with the bacon in here. Next, we're going to season this. Seasonings are simple, just a little salt, little pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder, but of course you can use whatever seasonings you like. So here is the finished Hoppin John, and like I said, simple ingredients, but we really liked this. Here are the plates. So we've got some of the sliced pork tenderloin, some of that cream mustard sauce, and then I had some of the leftover chopped parsley and chives, so I'll just sprinkle that on top as a little garnish. We've got some of the Hoppin John and the cornbread with butter, and you guys, we loved this dinner. It was so good. For dinner the next night, I tried a new recipe for Greek chicken thighs. Check the description box below for the recipe. Here is what I'm going to use for the marinade for the chicken. I've got salt and pepper, dried oregano, dried thyme, Dijon mustard, olive oil, some lemon, and then minced garlic. And I'm sorry, I've got 2 things of pepper here, but I only used 1. And then I have a package of chicken thighs. You could use chicken breasts, you could do drumsticks, whatever you prefer. But all I'm going to do is mix up the marinade and add that along with the chicken thighs to a Ziploc bag. You can marinate this for as little as 30 minutes or a couple hours. I think I did about 3 hours. Once the chicken is marinated, you are going to place the chicken breast and the marinade into a baking dish and bake this at 375 degrees for about 25 minutes. Flip your chicken over, cook it for another 25 minutes or so until the chicken is at least 165, 175 degrees internal temperature. I did broil the chicken for maybe 3 or 4 minutes to get that skin nice and golden brown on top. And then I took the leftover marinade that was in the dish and brushed it on top of the chicken. For the other side, I'm going to do some roasted Greek potatoes. I made these once before and they were so good, I couldn't wait to make them again. Here I've got some red potatoes. I washed them really well. I'm going to cut them in half, and then I cut each half into wedge shapes. I'm going to add those to a bowl. Once I've got all of my potatoes cut up, and I just kind of loosely followed the recipe. Of course, it'll be linked in the description box below, but I just kind of eyeballed all of the spices and, the amounts of everything. So to those sliced up potatoes, we're going to add some olive oil, followed by some dried rosemary, and I just used what was left of this little jar. Next, I'm going to add in some garlic powder, paprika, And a quick note, I believe the first time I made these, I used russet potatoes and they turned out delicious. So if you've got russets on hand, you can totally use those. Next, I'm going to use some dried oregano. And finally, some freshly cracked black pepper and kosher salt. Once I've added the seasonings, I'm going to give that a really good mix with a spoon. And then, so the recipe for the potatoes said to cook these at 450, but my oven was at like 350 or 375 for the chicken. And so I decided to cook these in the air fryer. I did 400 degrees for about 15 minutes, gave the basket a shake, and I cooked them for another 15 minutes or so until they were tender and golden brown. Here's what they look like when they were done, and the recipe says at this point, toss in some fresh lemon zest and give them a stir. And the first time I made these, I almost didn't add the lemon zest because I was like, I don't know, that kind of sounds weird, but don't skip the lemon zest. It is so, so good. Here is a picture of my plate Gary ate after he got home from the gym, which was basically the same thing as I had. It's just, of course, he had a little bit more. So we've got the chicken, those potato wedges, and then I had some of the boar's head tzatziki that I served for dipping with the potato wedges. And then for the salads, I just took some lettuce, tomato, cucumbers, some feta cheese. On Gary's salad, I added some olives and then croutons and that hummus vinaigrette. And y'all, this was delicious. That marinade on the chicken, it was so simple, but that chicken had so much flavor, and because we used the thighs, they were juicy, and oh my gosh, the chicken was delicious, and the potatoes and the tzatziki is delicious. So good. For dinner this first night, I tried a new recipe for baked spaghetti. This is from The Cozy Cook, and of course the recipe will be linked in my description box below for you. So I've got the oven preheating to 375 degrees. While that's preheating, I'm going to get started on my sauce. In this skillet, I've got a little bit of olive oil. This is on about medium heat. I'm going to add in some diced onion, red bell pepper, and mushrooms. Here I've got about a half a pound of ground turkey. You could also use ground beef or even Italian sausage. I'm going to season that up with some salt and pepper, and then I am going to kind of chop the meat up with this meat chopper and then cook this for maybe 10 minutes or so until the ground meat is cooked all the way through. Now, if you're using sausage or ground beef, you may have to drain the fat off. Here is the pasta that I'm going to use. This is the Barilla Protein Plus Thin Spaghetti. I'm just going to boil it up in salted water according to the package instructions. So once that ground turkey was cooked all the way through and the veggies were tender, I'm going to add in the Rayo's marinara sauce. I really like this marinara sauce. It can be a little pricey, so I either get it when it goes on BOGO at Publix or I get it from Sam's Club. You can use whatever pasta sauce you like, or you can, of course, make your own. Now, I'm going to add some salt and pepper, and then here, I meant to add the minced garlic to the ground turkey, but I forgot, but that's totally fine. I'm going to add it now. And then I like to doctor up spaghetti sauce anytime I use it. So I'm going to add in a little garlic powder and Italian seasoning. And then I like to add just a tiny pinch of sugar. If that offends you, don't add it to your spaghetti sauce. You're in your kitchen, you do you. This Rayo sauce doesn't have any added sugar. It's just the tomatoes and some seasoning. So I like to add just a tiny little pinch to that. And then I'm going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, and of course, give it a taste. Make sure you're happy with the seasonings and everything. I'm going to add in some cream cheese. Now, the recipe suggested just softened cream cheese, but I had some of this whipped cream cheese, so I'm going to add that in. And a quick note, I forgot to mention this. I halved the recipe. To the cream cheese, I'm going to add in ricotta. You could also use cottage cheese here. If you're not a big fan of ricotta cheese normally, I would try it in this recipe because with it mixed into the spaghetti sauce, you don't have that same like dry texture with ricotta cheese if that kind of, turns you off from using it. Now I'm going to add in some Parmesan cheese. I shredded this myself, but you could just use the grated kind. I'm going to give that a stir. The stove is off at this point. I'm just going to allow that to kind of carry over, cook, and allow the cheeses to melt. Now I'm going to add in my cooked and drained pasta. And again, I'm using thin spaghetti. You could use really any kind. I mean, this is called baked spaghetti, but you can use any shape of pasta. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to give the noodles a really good toss, and then we're going to get this in the oven. So here, I think this is an 8x11. I sprayed it with some cooking spray. I'm going to add in that spaghetti mixture, and then we're going to add some more cheese on top. This is that shredded Parmesan cheese, and really I'm just adding that because I have it this little bit and I need to use it up. And then the recipe called for just regular shredded mozzarella, but I had about a half of container of fresh sliced mozzarella. So I just kind of pulled that apart with my fingers and did like a hand shredded mozzarella cheese. This is going to go into the preheated oven. Remember, it was set at 375, and I baked this for about 20 minutes until it was bubbly and golden brown on top. This is what it looked like, and then I allowed it to sit for about 10 minutes, and then I added some fresh chopped basil to the top. To go along with this spaghetti, I've got these New York bakery breadsticks. I just find these at Walmart, Kroger, Publix, and I feel like these are pretty similar to the breadsticks at the Olive Garden. I mean, they're not as good, but if you love those breadsticks, give these a try because they're pretty darn close. I just bake them according to the package instructions, and then once they are done, I like to brush them with just a little bit of butter on top. Here are the plates. So we've got some of the baked spaghetti, the garlic breadsticks, and then I just made some side salads. Both Gary and I really, really loved this baked spaghetti. I will definitely make this again. I and Gary both felt like it tasted very, very similar to lasagna, except, you don't have to do all the layering and it's not as time consuming as lasagna. And like I said earlier, I know some people don't love the texture of ricotta cheese or even cottage cheese, and mixing that along with the pasta sauce, you still got that creaminess of the cheese without that texture. So this was really good, super budget friendly, very filling. This made a ton. We had leftovers for lunch for a couple days, and it was even better the subsequent days. This was really, really good. Like I said, I'll definitely make this again. For dinner the next night, I tried a new recipe for a creamy Tuscan shrimp pasta. Check the description box below for the recipe for this, and I halved the recipe, by the way. So in this skillet here, I'm going to add in some oil from a container of sun-dried tomatoes. I decided to add just a little extra virgin olive oil plain to that, and I've got this on about medium-high heat. I'm going to get this nice and hot and then sear the shrimp. Now, I was impatient. I did not let this skillet get nearly as hot as what it needed to be, so the shrimp really didn't get a good sear on it, but that's okay. The shrimp got cooked. That's what's important. So once the shrimp were cooked, I removed them to a separate plate, and then to kind of cool the pan down and get the yummy bits off the bottom, I'm going to add in just a little splash of chicken broth. You could also use white wine if you have that on hand. So I'm going to give that a stir and let that cook for just a couple minutes until it reduces, and then I am going to add in my shallots, and at this point I turn my heat down to about medium low. So I'm going to give that a stir and cook the shallots for about 3 to 5 minutes or so until they get nice and tender. And y'all, I'm sorry, I totally forgot to mention, I had seasoned that shrimp up with some salt, pepper, and garlic powder off camera. Now I'm going to add in some sun-dried tomatoes. I just pulled them from the jar, gave them a rough chop. I'm also going to add in some minced garlic. You could, of course, mince up your own. I'm just using the stuff from the jar. I'm going to give that a stir and then cook this for just a couple minutes until the sun-dried tomatoes get tender. At this point, I'm going to add in the heavy cream, followed by some grated Parmesan cheese. Now, you could, of course, grate your own, but I just bought some pre-grated, found it on sale at Kroger, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm sure if all you have is the stuff in the green jar in your pantry, that would be totally fine as well. I've used that, and it turns out just fine. So I'm going to add in the cheese, gave a little extra sprinkle for good measure. I'm going to give that a stir. I did end up stirring it with a whisk, and then you just want to cook this for, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 minutes or so. Again, this is on like medium-low, medium heat until your sauce gets thickened. And as you can see here, you can take your finger and run it on the back of the spoon, and the sauce stays intact. Now I'm adding in my spinach. I just gave this a rough chop. I'm going to give this a stir and cook this for just a minute or two until that spinach wilts. And then we're ready to add in our pasta. You could use whatever pasta you prefer. I had some thin spaghetti on hand, so I just cooked that up according to the package instructions, drained it. I did reserve some of the pasta water, though, in case, the sauce needed to be loosened up a little bit. So once I've got the pasta in there, I'm going to give it a toss and then add in that cooked shrimp from earlier, give that another stir, and then that's it. the pasta is ready. Now, if you don't like shrimp, no worries at all. You could use chicken breast, or you could just make this a vegetarian meal and leave the protein out altogether. But yeah, this pasta was so creamy, so dreamy, and had such great flavor. This was delicious. We really, really enjoyed this. Now, I wanted some garlic bread with this. I didn't have any on hand. I did have like a half a box of the Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuit mix in my pantry that I've really been needing to use up. So I just cooked those according to the package instructions. So here is my plate. Gary's, you'll see in just a second. It's the exact same thing. We've got the pasta and the biscuits, and I did add just a little tiny bit of the grated Parmesan cheese on top as a little garnish. First up, I'm making a Thai shrimp coconut curry. This recipe, along with any other recipes from today's video, will be in the description box below, so check there. I have never had a Thai curry, or any curry really, before, let alone make it. So I was kind of nervous to do this, but I really wanted to try curries. So I decided to give this a shot, and let me show you what I did. First up, I've got some shrimp. I did remove the tails as well as the shell and, the little membrane from it. I'm going to add some soy sauce, crushed red pepper flakes, and I realized after I did the crushed red pepper flakes, I added too much, so you can see me trying to pick off some of the red pepper flakes. I'm adding in some ground turmeric as well as garlic powder. And then last but not least, I'm going to add in some ground white pepper. I'm going to give that a really good mix. And as I was mixing it, I felt like it was a little, like almost dry for me with the shrimp and the seasoning. So I added just a splash of soy sauce, not a lot. I'm going to give that a stir and then set that to this side. Now I've got this skillet over high heat with some oil, and we're just going to sear the shrimp. Shrimp do not take long to cook at all, just maybe a minute, minute and a half per side. Once the shrimp has been seared, I'm going to remove it to a separate plate and set that to the side while we work on the rest of the curry. Now, the recipe did not call for bok choy, but I wanted to add it. So I'm going to add in some sliced red bell pepper, give that a stir, and then add in the stalks of the bok choy. I just sliced those up kind of thinly. Give that a stir, and then I'm going to allow that to cook for about 5 minutes until those get tender. After 5 minutes, I'm going to add in the tops of the bok choy. Now I'm going to add in the chopped shallots, minced garlic, and the ginger. Now you can, of course, mince up your own garlic, grate up your own ginger. I'm using this stuff in the jar and tube just to keep it easy. Give that a stir, and we're going to cook that for about 2 minutes. Next up, we're going to deglaze this with a little bit of chicken broth. I'm using water and some bouillon powder. You want to give that a stir and then simmer that for about 2 minutes. And you want to make sure you scrape up any of the little bits on the skillet. After 2 minutes, we're going to add in this red curry paste. I just found this at the regular grocery store. I can't remember if I found it at Walmart or Kroger, but just the regular grocery store in the Asian section. I'm going to give that red curry paste a little stir, and then we're going to add in the brown sugar. And off camera later on, I gave the sauce a taste, and I ended up adding about a tablespoon more of brown sugar, but that was just to taste. Now I'm going to add in the turmeric, cumin, ground coriander, white pepper. Then I'm going to add in the soy sauce and fish sauce, give that a stir, and cook it for 1 minute. Now, a quick note here, I don't remember if it was my last What's for Dinner video or the one before, but I'd made coconut rice, and I'd mentioned that the last few times I've made coconut rice, I've had problems with it taking a lot longer to cook and it really not really getting tender. And somebody mentioned and said you need to make sure you're using unsweetened coconut milk. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know that there was a difference. But when I looked back and looked at the coconut rice recipe, sure enough, it said make sure you use unsweetened. So take it from me, lesson learned, make sure you use unsweetened coconut milk. And again, just got this in the regular grocery store. So I'm going to add that in and then give it a stir. Bring it to a boil and simmer it for 5 minutes or until it starts to thicken. At this point, we're going to add some lime juice, sriracha, and then the recipe called for Thai basil. I didn't have any on hand, and I didn't want to buy just a little bit for this recipe, so I skipped it. I read online that you can substitute Thai basil for a mixture of regular like Italian basil, and mint. But I didn't have any mint on hand, so like I said, I just skipped it. So we're going to give that a stir, and then allow that to cook just for about a minute. Now, here I'm going to use, these are some garnishes that the recipe suggested. I've got some fried onions, chopped cilantro, and green onions. Now, we're going to add that shrimp back in and then cook that for just a minute. You don't need to cook it any longer. You're just warming that shrimp up. And yeah, we're ready to serve it up. Give it a taste. Adjust the seasonings to your taste. I'm going to serve this over some rice. This is just jasmine rice. I rinsed it in cold water until the water ran clear and cooked it up in the rice cooker. And then here are the plates. Laid down that rice, added the curry, added some of those fried onions, the cilantro, the green onions, and then I had some naan bread in my freezer. I just thawed it up, toasted it up, and this was delicious. Both Gary and I loved this. It was so good. It was so flavorful. I know it seemed like a lot of steps. I mean, it kind of was, but it wasn't hard at all. And if you have everything, sitting out on your counter, it takes maybe 30 minutes start to finish to put this together, and it was delicious. Now, I will say it had the perfect amount of heat for us. If it would have been any spicier, it would have been probably a little too spicy for us. So if you're sensitive to heat, you can cut back on the red curry paste a little bit, and the sriracha, and then, you can always add more. But yeah, this was delicious. So, so good. Dinner the next night was yet another quick and easy meal. Let me show you what I did to put this together. So first up, I have these spinach feta chicken meatballs that I got at Sam's Club. They've been in my freezer and I've been looking for a way to use them up. On Pinterest, I'd come across a recipe for like a chicken meatball orzo bowl. And so I kind of loosely followed this. I mean, I just used that as inspiration, but I will link that recipe down in the description box below in case you want to check it out. It does have a recipe for homemade Greek chicken meatballs, so you can check that out. Like I said, I'm just using the ones from Sam's Club tonight. And then I'm going to use this Uncle Ben's rice pilaf. This is the 90-second rice. You just pop it in the microwave. I have some Kalamata olives for Gary's bowl. I don't like olives, so I'm going to skip it. Cucumber, tomato, I've got some feta cheese, tzatziki sauce, and then I have these little naan dippers that I'm going to heat up as well. So I just followed the instructions on the package. I did one of the package of chicken meatballs. It came with 2 packages in there. I just baked it according to the package instructions. And then to assemble the bowls, I just laid down the cooked rice, added on the meatballs, our other toppings, and this was really good. I was kind of honestly worried about the chicken meatballs. With it being like ground chicken, I was expecting them to be really dry, really tough, and they weren't at all. They were juicy, they were flavorful, they were really good, and Gary really loved this especially. So if you see those meatballs at Sam's Club, grab you a package and give this a try. First up, I made a Mandarin orange cake. It's also known as a pickin cake, and I don't know how I've lived in the South my entire life and never had this cake. I've heard of it, I've just never had it. And you guys, this became a family favorite. Everyone in my family absolutely loved this. It was delicious, so I highly recommend you give this recipe a try. I will, of course, have it linked in the description box below for you. Here are the ingredients that I'm going to use. You'll need a yellow cake mix. Just use your favorite brand. I just use the Great Value brand. You'll need some crushed pineapple, Cool Whip or whipped topping, and you can make your own homemade whipped cream if you prefer to do that. Some vanilla pudding mix, a can of Mandarin oranges, some oil, and eggs. I've got my oven preheating to 350 degrees, and an important note here, we're going to use the yellow cake mix, but you do not want to follow the instructions on the yellow cake mix. Just disregard it. You want to follow the recipe. So once I've added the cake mix to a bowl, we're going to add in the oil. Next, we're going to add in the eggs, and I like to put them in a separate dish. That's how my granny taught me to do it, because most of the time she used farm fresh eggs. But also, I like to give it a little mix outside of, the larger mixing bowl. For me, it just makes it a little easier to mix it up, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just toss them all in the bowl. Once we've added in the eggs, we're going to add in the Mandarin oranges, and you do not want to drain this. You want to leave the juice in there. We are going to take out some Mandarin oranges for the top. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that, but it just makes a nice little garnish, and it helps people know, kind of what the flavor of the cake is. So we're going to mix that up really, really well. Set that to the side, and then you're going to put this into a greased baking dish. I've got a 9x13 foil pan here, and I did spray it with some of the pan baking spray. You could just use butter, flour, parchment, however you like to grease your pan. So we're going to add the cake mix in there, spread it out, and this is going to go into the preheated oven. Remember, it was set at 350 degrees. And we're going to bake this for about 20 to 25 minutes or so, or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. And we're going to let that cake cool completely before we frost it. Now for the frosting for the cake. I'm going to add a box of the vanilla pudding mix, and this is the instant pudding. I'm going to add that to a bowl. Next, we're going to add in the crushed pineapple. Now, I believe the recipe calls for 16 ounces, 2 of the little 8-ounce containers. I couldn't find those, so I just got one of the 20 ounce, and you can see I've got my food scale over here just measuring out the 16 ounces, and we just snacked on the rest of the pineapple. So I'm going to give that a good mix, and then it is time to add in the whipped topping. Now, this has thawed completely. I'm going to add that, and with a spatula, just kind of fold that in. Now, a quick note about the cakes. I used, just like a 9x13 dish. You could use round cake pans if you'd prefer to do that to make a layered cake. Now, some of the recipes I saw for this called for powdered sugar in the frosting. I wasn't sure if I wanted to add it or not. I gave it a taste, and I did add a little bit. I think I added like 1/3 of a cup of powdered sugar, but just give it a taste, and if you feel like it needs a little extra sweetness, add in the powdered sugar to your taste. So once that's really well mixed, that's it. We're going to frost the cake, and then like I said, I'm just putting some of those mandarin oranges on top as a little garnish, and then you can serve this right away. I popped this in the refrigerator and served it the next day, and like I said, this cake was delicious. The cake itself was so moist. It had a great orange flavor, and then like the pineapple frosting just went so well with the cake. This was delicious, and I'll definitely be making it again during this spring and summer season. And that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and taking this little walk down memory lane with me. I hope that this gave you some new ideas of things to try. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.